From the assault on our nervous system, to the poisoning of our food and our water, to the extraction of all the natural resources on Mother Earth, it seems like the most radical resistance is being well, taking care of ourselves, body, mind, heart, spirit. Today's guest is Peter McLaughlin, a hypnotherapist who has a very popular YouTube channel, BlueSky Hypnosis, and he's going to explore this topic with us today about looking under the surface to see the root causes of our unwellness and bringing ourselves back into wholeness. Join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show, the Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show. Soul Nectar Show. Soul Nectar Show.
Well, hello and welcome everybody back to the show, back to Soul Nectar Show. I'm your host, Kerri Hummingbird, and we have conversations week after week on Soul Nectar Show. You know, we gather around the campfire and we share our stories like our ancestors before us, share stories of connection, stories of experiences and the mystery. And we try to make sense of this thing called life. And maybe we get a revelation today, or 2 or 3 or 10. I always desire that when we gather together, that there'll be revelations, and that those revelations will be, first of all, just really exciting to experience, but then also open up new doorways into more revelations and more realizations and deeper embodiment of this humanity thing that's going on, and also help us make sense of life that's happening around us right now. There's a lot going on in the collective, and we are definitely being asked to be more attentive than we have literally ever been. And because we can't stop watching and paying attention to things, but we also can't let ourselves get sucked into it and dragged down by it. And then we also can't, it's like such a skinny branch right now, everybody, like what's going on. And so what I like to do in today's conversation, again, as with last week's conversation with John Rasmussen, I'd like to dive a little bit deeper and see what's under the surface, what's actually, sort of pulling the strings of all of these experiences, that are happening in the collective, that are affecting us. And then what can we do about it? How can we be empowered through this experience rather than be on the triangle of disempowerment and feel victimized or feel like we have to rescue other people? So how do we get into our center again, our groundedness, to remember the truth of things in such a way that we can handle what's happening all around us with more grace and less exhaustion and more curiosity and less fear and more love and more compassion and all of that great stuff. So today's guest is Peter McLaughlin. Welcome, Peter, to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, Peter and I had a great connection. He's a certified hypnotherapist and life coach whose healing journey began after a leukemia diagnosis in 2003. My father actually was diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia. I don't know if I shared that with you, but he never died from that. It went into stasis and nothing ever happened to it because his soul was like, nope, that's not how I'm going out. So really interesting guy. He's not here with us anymore in physical, but he's with us all the time in the etheric. So anyway, Peter's story. Peter had a turning point, led him to explore the powerful connection with mind, body, and spirit. And he helps clients to find and resolve root cause trauma. Like I said, looking at the roots of things, not like all the stuff that's got, the symptoms, but we want to get down into the roots to see what's happening. And when we work with the roots, we can really transform stuff. And so past life regression, deep spiritually oriented healing methods. I mean, these are the things that we also do, that I also do and that Peter does. And so this is another lens in to see, why this stuff is so successful and helps people so much. So Peter's the creator of the popular YouTube channel BlueSky Hypnosis with over 130,000 subscribers. Congratulations on that. You're getting the word out. 17 million views. That's awesome. And sharing tools for emotional breakthrough and healing. And also you were a former firefighter, which is so cool. And an EMT. Gosh, firefighters and EMTs are my friends lately with my health challenges that I've had since November. So yeah, really love those frontline help support people. And this is a different kind of being in the front lines, right? So Peter, so
It is.
yeah. So tell us a little bit more about like, I know you had that's an awakening journey. You have a physical health crisis and, your life is threatened. I mean, that'll get you on a spiritual path real fast. So what was your experience like that with that?
It was a spiritual 2x4. And it's because I obviously wasn't heeding the more subtle signs that came before it. And it wasn't just a diagnosis of leukemia. It was also a diagnosis of Lyme disease, which compared to, cancer, blood cancer, it was like, oh yeah, that. But it was two things on the same day. And I'm convinced that that's what it took to get my attention. That, as I said, I hadn't paid attention to the more subtle things that had come before. And so this is what I needed. And I describe it as presenting a doorway to me. And it was my free will to choose to enter that doorway and walk through or not. And all the other doorways that had been presented to me, I obviously had not walked through them, but this one I did. And that really changed my life. And I think it's the reason I'm still here.
Yeah. And it's something that, we've done some scientific research on it, and it's proven that when you work with hypnosis of any kind and then shamanic realms, we call it trance state, when we go on a journey, when we go into the subconscious, when we take that journey and we involve the soul, the part of us that helps us be alive, that even, to even exist. And we engage that as the personality and in the body, we have tremendous healing potentials because that part of us is beyond time and space and is eternal and has all the medicine of the entire universe at his connection, at his disposal. So yeah, like anything can happen. Flat out miracles can happen when the soul gets involved, right? And so learning how to talk with the soul, how to work with the soul, how to follow, how to co-create, that seems to be like the major healing journey after we have these life crises.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. And I've heard that it's common for people to have some kind of a crisis around the age of 40. That this is a sort of a thing. And I suspect that it has to do with, you're walking down a path and it's not the path that your soul wants you on. And so there is this attempt at diverting you. And I think, as I said before, that free will may be that you just keep, bullheaded going down the same path and other things happen and you take more drugs and other things happen. But it is an opportunity. A crisis is an opportunity. It's even the Chinese character for crisis is the same one they use for opportunity. And I think if we can view that pain and crises that way, we become more empowered by it.
And here's my cat. I knew Sensei would make an appearance. Hello, Sensei. I love you. And how about both of them? Okay. So we'll see if we can keep him out of the space. Probably not. This is gonna happen. So
it's fine with me.
Yeah. What you were talking, I was getting this download and then Sensei kind of interrupted it. But it was like, oh, like the first part of the life is kind of like this contract between the personality, which is the vessel, right, for a lifetime, and then the soul. And the soul says, okay, personality, human being, you can have full control over all this stuff until this midpoint. And then it's my turn. But it's like the personality doesn't like giving up the reins. It's like, no, I don't want to give up control now.
Yeah.
But it has to get like bad enough, like uncomfortable enough that we say, okay, you're right. Like I give up the wheel. Go ahead, have it. Like I don't know what to do with
Yeah.
the thing anyway. Like,
Yeah.
because it's getting into the territory of the soul, which is like really deep and wise. And like, personality has no idea what to do with any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's time to
Yeah.
let go, right? Because you had your life, like you got to live without any interference from the soul. You got to just kind of do whatever you wanted for like that first 30 years or however long you get in your contract, right? And then that's it. Like it's the soul's turn.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And before we went live, we were talking about the movie It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
And you could argue that the exact same thing happens to him. That he has a series of disappointments that gradually turn into a crisis. And that the crisis evokes a spiritual journey where he's able to see his lifetime from a different perspective with the help of his guardian angel, which I think of as a spirit guide. And when he has that experience, he comes back to his other life transformed because his perspective has shifted based upon the crisis.
Yeah, and once you open that door, you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
No.
So there's usually some moment of crisis, right? That leads the personality to say, please, God, just help me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, help me. I can't do this. And then that opens the door. And now the genie is out of the bottle and you can't put it back in. And there's just like more and more and more friction, right? Between the personality and the soul. And it's like, we know who's going to win this, but some people really hold on to it. Right. And I think the art is in letting go. It's like the art is in remembering, like I created, like as a soul, I created this personality so I could experience it fully without my knowing of myself and truth activated. So it's all you anyway.
Yeah.
But then you can stop the tussle because it's like, oh no, it's all me.
Yep. And I like to think of this life and all the other lives we've lived as kind of like being an actor on a stage. Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage, all the men and women are merely players. Each has his entrance and exit. And when I think about things that way, I cannot take life as seriously, which I think is always valuable for me, because I think that's where I lean towards is taking it too seriously. And when I back that off a little bit, it's easier to relax, it's easier to laugh, it's easier to go to sleep, it's easier to be creative. Bless you.
Thanks. Yeah. So part of the thing that happens, I think, and we're in this evolutionary moment of like a lot of people coming to the same crisis at the same time. So I think that's probably what makes us different is just like how many people are alert and aware of the crisis situations unfolding collectively, and then their personal crisis is happening, but then it's also happening at this collective level. Normally, it used to be that there was like just collective whatever going on, and then some people would be having a crisis in their personal lives, other people would be doing just great, and like it was kind of like, there was a balance in that. But right now, it feels like more people are in a crisis and coming to that evolutionary place. And I think the only thing holding this thing grounded is the fact that so many of us have already gone through that. Like, this is a collective crisis and there's a lot of really disturbing things happening. But because we've already taken the journey and we know who we are in truth, it's less scary. It's like, oh, okay, that's what we're collectively experiencing. Okay, I'm going to do my best to apply my tools and to be with the experience and fully experience it in the way that's meant for me. And I'm going to take actions according to my soul because I know how to listen to my inner guidance, So like when you're in that spot, then you're just kind of anchoring the space for all the other people who are like freaking out right now because there's a lot.
True. And a few years ago, I was particularly upset by what was going on in the world. And in meditation, I always meet with my guides and I can speak to them. And I asked them, I said, why is this place, and I used an expletive, and the immediate answer that I got from that was immediate. was A, you chose to come here. B, when you want to be entertained, you stand in line and pay money for movies, theatrical shows, you buy novels, TV shows that all involve conflict. So don't complain about this, because that's what you signed up for. And we all know that you learn more from conflict than you do from when everything is totally peaceful. You know, it's a more rapid growth, I should say. That's a better way of saying it. Just like when you're diagnosed with leukemia, you know, you have an opportunity for more rapid growth than if everything just kind of meanders along in a quote unquote normal way.
Exactly, because that actually normalcy that we used to think like this is just a normal, that was abnormal, because life is actually always fluid, always moving, and always changing. It's just that humanity learned how to artificially insert stuckness, right? So that things would stay predictable, reliable, and the same. And then we try to do that to our emotional body, like predictable, reliable, the same. And that's not the way it is.
It's a great point.
You know, so now all that's busting loose, and like real life is coming out, and people are like, oh no, you know, like that's a lot of drama. And it's like, yeah, then you get to practice mastery. How do you cultivate emotional resiliency, right? Like, and then people come to you, right, Peter, because they're like, they don't want to be angry all the time, and they don't want to be scared all the time, and they don't want to, you know, lose their stuff at the stoplight. You know, they don't want to take it out on a stranger or their partner. So they come to you, and so what do they say? You know, they say, I want to sort this out. I want to change how I'm showing up, right?
Yes. I mean, I often think about cars, and a person doesn't bring their car to a mechanic unless there is some kind of unpleasant symptom. You know, there's a weird noise pulling to one side. There's smoke coming out of the engine. There's going to be some kind of symptom. And the job of the mechanic is to listen to the symptom, hear them talk about that, and then trace it back to the deeper root cause reason why the symptom exists, and then resolve that root cause. That's literally what I do in the simplest way of explaining it.
Yeah, and it involves, like, to do this kind of job, it involves something that a lot of people need to learn how to do better, which is listen. Because you're listening, right? Like when you're like deep listening, talk about that. Like you're really listening to the person, what they're saying, you're watching them, you're listening to your own body, right? Like what's that experience like for you?
I'm listening particularly for patterns. So I'm listening for recurring patterns. That's number one. I'm listening for different kinds of trauma that they've had. I'm listening for certain words that they use. So I have a client now who one of his issues is a bad back, really painful. He's on all kinds of medication and everything. And he was talking about a traumatic incident with his mother and with his sister, where they stole money from him. And the language that he used was, that really broke my back. And I know that the subconscious mind is totally literal, and that if it thinks that you have a broken back, it can create the feelings of a broken back, especially if you hold that belief coupled with intense emotion, and it gets repeated over and over and over again. That the subconscious can actually just create that because it doesn't get, you're just making an analogy. It doesn't get sarcasm. It doesn't get other forms of humor. Everything to the subconscious mind is literal. It's like talking to a 3 or a 4-year-old. They believe everything you say. And this is why in the book, The 4 Agreements that many of your listeners are probably familiar with, one of the agreements is to be impeccable with your word. And I think part of that is have thoughts and speak about what you want, not about what you don't want, because we can create either. And that it's crucial to be to be careful because your words are so powerful, not just to other people, but to yourself.
Yes. And I love that you brought that up because we practice the 4 agreements in inner medicine community. It's like when I first got my hands on that book, it was the year after I started my spiritual journey, or 6 months later, I read that thing 30 times front to back. I was like, because I read it once and I was like, that's easy. And I started trying and I was like, no, it's not easy. So I was like, I have to reprogram my brain. I actually have to reprogram my brain and how, because the words that come out of my mouth create my reality. So I read it 30 times front to back. I still listen to it. I'm listening to it again now.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah, because you forget. And it's like, oh, wait a second. Am I really practicing it? Let me go take another look because there's nuances. You get down to like these little gritty nuances and you just go, okay, there's more here. And that opens up everything. Every single little one you find where it's a little snag, that you unsnag it. Now you've got more power. So I love to unsnag things. So, and I was thinking about, he talks about the dream of the planet and how like a lot of people don't realize that everything they believe in life and everything that they're recreating with their words and their story has to do with the stories that they were told by their ancestors, which has to do with the stories that they were told in their communities and with their families and then their ancestors. And so like when you have creation stories, that are based in, I don't know, creating something really harmful for us, like this idea that there's something that could really eat your soul and, and send you to this place called hell and all of this he talks about hell in the book. What is hell really? Hell is what we create with our words. Like we actually create it by talking about that idea and keeping that idea going, that dream of the planet going. Right. So there, without like insulting anyone's religion, but it's like, think about the origin story. Like we have to question all of these assumptions because our word creates the very thing that we say. So I know that when we talked initially, you were talking about how, people are, when you see people, you're like, oh, they've got an entity attached to them. And well, where did the entity come from? It's a creation. It came from people believing that there were these things and then creating it by their word and talking about it and having it in these really holy books. And then it's real because it's like right there. It's real. And then you do have to contend with it. And people are attached to it. They don't want to let it go because it's part of their identity or part of their worldview or how they think. Listen, the indigenous people, just as a proof of fact, they don't have that cosmology. The Andean people, they didn't have that idea. Or they just believe in Mother Earth and the mountains and the plants and the animals and the birds and everything. Indigenous people believe in that. Like they believe Mother Earth is here providing for us and loving and nurturing us. And they have a completely different experience of life than somebody who's steeped in this idea that around every corner is a demon that's like out to take your soul. But when you work with them, you see it. It actually is there. But only because they gave it power, they helped create it.
Well, my experience with that with clients is similar in my mind to the concept of Velcro. So for Velcro to work, you have to have a hook on one side and you have to have a loop on the other side, and then it sticks together and it sticks together very tightly. If you tried to take one side of the Velcro and put it on your refrigerator, it's not going to stick. And what you're saying, I'm translating it into my own belief system and my own experience. And that is the real problem with entity attachment is the client themselves, that they are holding on generally subconsciously to the entity. And that once you help them release the need to hold on to this thing, it goes because it has nothing to grab. It's just holding on to the refrigerator now. So there are definitely aspects of what you're talking about that make sense to me, even though I've got different words and different concepts for the same thing.
So yeah, when you see somebody that comes in, let's say they have like an eating disorder, like they just can't stop emotional eating or, and they want help. When you look at that, you probably do see some kind of creation that's stirring that, or some trauma, or like, what are some of the things that you notice, for example? Because I know what I've seen, but what do you see?
Sure. The eating disorder could be a past lifetime where they starved. And that's the subconscious reason why they keep going back to this. It could be a subconscious identification with a loved one who was also heavy. It could be a feeling like they're worthless, or that they're not loved. And so they're using food in a vain attempt to fill themselves up. It could be a protective mechanism. So they might have been sexually abused when they were younger, and the subconscious is creating armor, like a distance from the world. Maybe even there's a belief that if they become super heavy, that they won't be attractive to would-be attackers. And all of it is happening at the subconscious level. On the entity side, they could have entities attached to them that have a compulsion to be large, or a compulsion to eat, for all of those, some or all of those reasons that I just gave. I find that that's probably one of the most complex issues to deal with, because it can be so many different things, and it can be a constellation of them, and we need to eat in order to survive. So it's not like smoking where they can just give it up and they're not gonna die. They need, they don't need to smoke to be alive, or many other issues. So I find that one of the most challenging and complex because of all those variables that I mentioned, along with some physical variables which are driven by emotions. So for example, there's high vibration and low vibration in everything. That's what Tesla said. If you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Words have a frequency to them, high or low. So does food, high and low vibration. And because like attracts like, people who are upset, people who are depressed, people who feel like they're worthless, are vibrating at an extremely low frequency. This is why, quote unquote, comfort food is food that vibrates at a low frequency. When people are in love and they're vibrating at a really high frequency, sometimes they don't even want to eat. And if they do, they eat just a little bit. So that's another factor that I would wrap into that heading of, eating disorder or a weight issue, which is plaguing our culture. I'm old enough, maybe you are, to remember, going to grade school in the 1970s. And there might have been one heavy kid in a class of 25 that at the time was called husky because they weren't that big. It wasn't like they were obese. And then you have to layer in the poisons that are put in the food.
Yeah.
The seed oils are poisons. All the sugar that's put into the food, the supersize meals that were placed out, the high fructose corn syrup, all of this is kind of new, along with growth hormones that might be in the meat or other products. So it's a very complex problem. And I've spent a fair amount of time teasing this apart for myself, because I'm in this culture too. I'm eating, because you can't help yourself. You go out to a restaurant, you're probably going to get seed oils. And you have to learn these things for yourself because nobody's telling you,
And there's a big spiritual component to this, subconscious component, because why? It's kind of like, well, I'm going to say something that might be triggering to people, but it's like a death wish. It's like humanity overall has this wanting to extinct itself. We have like all these wars starting and all of this going on, right? And then this is like just an expression. Talk about the root problem. Like this is just an expression of that. It's like, when we, whatever, everything is a mirror. So when you're like, I just can't stand people, I just can't stand myself.
Mm-hmm. A projection.
It's a total projection field. So it's like such a frustration with the human experience. I'm not saying everybody's having this experience, but enough of the collective is having this experience that it's manifesting in all of these ways. Like there's obesity, there's wars, there's conflict, there's political violence, it's like gun violence, like all of this stuff is happening. And we're pillaging the earth instead of paying attention to what it needs. We're extracting resources without thinking about the future. We're just kind of like okay, and then we're going to go there because most of the planet, potentially, this is an idea, is the soul age isn't so wise. Like it's a younger soul age. And if you look at like teenagers, they don't think about long-term consequences of things. They just they just do whatever they want. They run pell-mell like we did, right? We were just talking about this at the beginning of the call. Like you just run pell-mell down the hill and you just do whatever you want. You take all these crazy risks and your mother's like amazed you're still alive and like really angry with you, and that's like being a teenage person. Well, the same is for souls. It's not until you get a few hard knocks that you go, I think that's not a good choice. Mm-hmm. I'm going to eat like you're doing because you're in your, you and I are in our more mature years. And so now we're looking at, I want to be careful what I eat and I don't want to eat something that's really bad for me. Right. Like, no. So like, it's just a matter of maturity in some ways. Right. But it's like, if this is all just one big dream, mm-hmm. These are the themes that we're being faced with collectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I am very partial to. Have you heard of the concept of the Great Year?
Tell me more.
It's a cycle that lasts something like 26,000 years, and it's broken up into 12 houses or ages. They're called. Yes, and each age is like 2,200 years or something. And we, recently moved from the age of Pisces, represented by the fish, into the age of Aquarius. And the idea is that it's based upon our sun and the star Sirius and this elliptical orbit they have with each other. And that the age of Pisces was when these two stars were the farthest apart. And this is correlated supposedly with human consciousness, the lowest human consciousness. And this is one of the theories why Jesus came during the age of Pisces, and that Christianity is represented by a fish. People put a fish on their bumper sticker. And he talked about, I will be with you until the end of the age. And that as these stars now, starting I think in 2012, start moving closer and closer to each other, that human consciousness is rising. And that's what we're feeling. And we're getting downloads from the sun. And this is a theory as to why certain people want to block out the sun. And why they want you to block it out. Like, wear long sleeves and long pants when you go outside and wear a wide brimmed hat and put chemical laden goo all over your body. Because the bigger reason is that the tiny group that's in control, they know this. And they know that the jig is up for them unless they can make the dike thicker, if they can make the dike taller, if they can patch the holes in the dike, then maybe they can hold on to their power. Because as these stars move closer to each other, we're getting closer and closer, ultimately, to a golden age. When human consciousness has changed so much that maybe you don't need to lock your door anymore. Maybe you don't need to have guns to protect yourself. Maybe you don't need to have police anymore. Maybe everybody just kind of like, why would I do that? So that's where I think we're coming out of a really dark age. But it's all part of this grand play that we're part of, including reincarnation. And that I believe there are dark forces, and that they are trying to suppress this. But the like a tulip or something in the spring breaking through the surface of the earth, that human consciousness is rising, and maybe all of this stuff is like a distraction. Do you know Rudolf Steiner, the man who came up with biodynamic farming, and he came up with the Waldorf schools. We sent our kids to Waldorf schools, but you're familiar with him?
Mm-hmm.
He wrote, or he gave a lecture in 1922 or 1923, and he said that in the future, man will develop, this is the word he used, a vaccine. And the purpose of the vaccine will be to divorce humanity from their divinity. And he said Jesus, to the authorities, was a virus. And they want to shut that virus down, he said, in 1922.
That's amazing.
I find that absolutely remarkable. And it supports this thesis that I have that this inevitable rise of human awareness, consciousness, is attempting to be suppressed through all of these mechanisms, some of which a lot of which we've talked about, including the food supply, including so-called entertainment. But
it's kind of like silly. Mm-hmm. Because God's source creator is all that is. Mm-hmm. So like I said, the genie's not going back in the bottle. And the more of us that emanate from an embodied place, higher frequencies like you're talking about, like it changes the entire dynamic. Like it literally selects a new reality for you than the one that others are living then when they're living from like you were talking about vibration, like frequency. Like if we're living at fast food vibration, we are a very low vibration. Yes. And in that reality, sure, we're subject to all the dark forces and all the stuff, right? Like it's happening. But as we lift out of that, right? And it's not easy to lift out of it. It's very difficult. No. It's challenging. But as you walk that, what I call the golden path, and you practice your spiritual mastery, and you work with earth, and you however you do it, you work with Jesus, whatever gets you through, right? Like you get these higher awarenesses and these revelations start to come through, and you're like, oh, that's how it works. I didn't know that before. Some part of me knows it, but I pulled it out of the subconscious, right? It's like, and then you have the opening where you feel better and then you feel lighter and more clear. And we're not talking about the false light, because that's another conversation we could have. We're not talking about like grounded, authentic life is just good. Mm-hmm. Right? When you have that experience, it's after a whole bunch of clearing of stuff that you have to clear out of the way. And so that part is rocky and it's messy. And that's where a lot of people are entering in right now into this like channel of that work. And it is a long, dark night. It's not easy. But as you move out of that, and the more that you're able to strengthen your energy field, strengthen your boundaries, know who you are in truth, bring love and compassion to yourself, let go of guilt and shame and lower vibrational energies, just like forgive that, feel it to heal it, release it, bring love to it, all of that, right? And you get rid of the Velcro, like all the places you're attached, that system, mm-hmm. and that they can hook you back in. Mm-hmm. You get to be free. In the middle of the system that everybody else is still hooked into, you're walking mm-hmm. around free. And that's like the Matrix. Yeah. That's like Neo walking around like, yeah, I'm not really part of this. I'm here only to help you guys realize that you don't have to be part of it either. And that's a place that many of us are getting to right now. And that's why it's hitting the ground running now. This fire horse year. And all of it's, of course, astrologically timed and perfect, that we would feel that we would have completed certain parts of the journey by choice, of course, right? Because it's all by choice too. Some people didn't complete it. But if you stayed on target, you stayed on track, you did. And now you're here to support the next wave of people that are going to be waking up. And it's a lot of people that are waking up all at the same time. And as you wake up, you realize that those things have no power over you. Why don't they have power? Because you're not down on the bottom frequency. And they will try to whisper to get you to kind of lower your frequency back down there so they can get a snag on you again. But you just like, no. No, it takes willpower, and it takes trust and clearing. But that's where the tools that you have are useful, because that's that clearing out of like you have to be extra mindful and go, oh, I heard that little voice try to entice me back into the wine or into the low vibrational food or into that. It's probably going to be fine if you just do this, and then you have to say no. Mm-hmm. Because there's something greater at stake, which is your freedom.
Yeah.
And not only that, but our collective freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, humanity rising together. So I see this time as like perfectly astrologically timed. And with the ending of the Piscean age, when you were talking about that, what came to me was the long dark night. I had this medicine journey, and I realized that a part of my soul like has been hanging out here on the planet through the long dark night. And it was like just holding space and like just kind of starting to wake up and go, oh, okay, it's time to wake up now. All right. And I felt it during the journey. And then there was like this feeling of celebration, like I had made it through the long dark night. And they gave me a spirit name, which I won't say because it's private, but like it was just like, wow, I made it through the long dark night when there was very little light on this planet. And this is kind of like what we're experiencing right now is like, you know, the 4th of July where they do all the fireworks and they kind of space them out for a while, you know, and then when they get near the end, they start to really put them out there, you know, like in this big display. I feel like that's what this is.
It feels like it. It feels like it. I mean, how much more stuff can they throw at us?
I mean, I almost hate to ask that question.
I think there's going to be more, but you know, they're going to run out of tricks at some point.
I mean, the bag of tricks is, plus the fact that people are waking up to it. Like, I think like this question of where is your line it's also part of the evolution into the golden age, because what creates the golden age is mature souls that decide I could create drama or I could create something beautiful. Which one do I want to create? You have a choice.
Yeah, I could blame someone else or I could take responsibility. I could clean up my side of the street.
Not to say there won't be difficult conversations. I think there's going to be a lot of difficult conversations in the Aquarian age. A ton of difficult conversations, actually. And I feel like the place we're going to meet it is a completely different place.
Yeah.
Amazing. This is why you want to do this kind of work, you guys, because every single little thing that you're experiencing in your life that's problematic has a root cause.
Yes.
And some of it you can't do anything about, which is collective, except to process your peace.
I like to think of it as invisible arrows. If you were having any kind of problem in your life, and I think there are 3 main areas of each person's life. There's your mental and physical health. That's one. The second one is your purpose, your business, your finances. That's 2. And 3 is relationship. And I think, you know, the primary relationship for most people is like their romantic partner, let's say. And if you're walking around with problems in any one of those areas, and you could see that you had 3 arrows sticking out of your body that represent emotional wounds, the first thing that anyone would say that was trying to help you, or you would say, is, I wonder how my relationship will be if I get these arrows that are sticking out of me out. I wonder how my mental and physical health will be. You know, I wonder how my work or my sense of purpose or my creativity, I wonder how that would be if I took these arrows out of me. It would be the first thing that we would do. And I think, as I say, it's important to recognize that's what it is. And if there's somebody you love who has an anger problem, or they've got a drinking problem, or you know, you fill in the blank. I'm not excusing the behavior, but what's underneath that is pain. Something happened to them in their past. And the solution isn't more distraction. It isn't more numbing out. It's actually turning towards the pain, finding those arrows and taking them out, which hurts. Yeah. Just like taking a splinter out. It hurts to take a splinter out, but everyone knows that's the solution. It's not to take more painkillers. It's not to walk around with crutches. You know, it's to get the needle, sterilize it, dig out the splinter, and then sterilize the wound put a Band-Aid over it, and 3 days later, it was like it never happened. That's the solution. But I find that our culture, again, is telling us when people have different kinds of problems to just distract yourself. And that's another thing with food. Food is probably the most widely used, in quotation marks, drug that people use to distract themselves, to give themselves a momentary feeling of pleasure because something else is missing, or they don't want to be thinking about something else that's painful. So yes,
Yeah.
we are in complete agreement about the whole root cause thing.
Yeah, this is the work. And it's, it's liberating. So lean in. My advice always is to lean into the difficult thing. I mean, you rushed into burning buildings. So, you're like one of those that went early adopter. Yeah, I'm going to rush into this building that's burning and I'm going to figure out what's in there. Like I'm going to put the fire out. Right? So
Which is yes, it's true. And that is the hero's journey. The hero is really good at something and then they have a catastrophic fall. And then they do everything in their power to avoid, quote unquote, getting back on the horse. And then sooner or later, they realize they have to. And when they get back on the horse, they overcome this obstacle, they overcome this fear, and they rise to a new height. And I was listening to Jordan Peterson talking about a cave. A cave is always guarded by a dragon. And there's always treasure inside the cave. And the bigger and more fierce the dragon is, the greater the treasure. And it's just another way of describing how, what you're saying, how important it is to face one's fears. And if I could take the analogy of the firefighter a little bit further, we don't do that just coming up off the couch with no training. Like there's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of training that's involved before we go into a burning building. And I think one could say the same thing for the things in your life. There's different ways you can prepare yourself for this. You can work with people like you or people like me or others. You can meditate, or you could pray. You can read books. You can study these things. And you can build up your strength in other ways. Make sure you get enough rest at night, that you're eating the right foods, that you're hydrating yourself properly, that you're getting in the sun for reasonable amounts of time, that you're exercising. And each area in which you strengthen yourself makes that warrior inside of you more able to embark on the hero's journey. Which then, in my brain, takes me back to why are they poisoning us?
Because they don't want us to take the hero's journey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. One of the most revolutionary things probably that we can do is to heal ourselves on all the levels. The physical level, the emotional level, the psychological level, and the spiritual level. And to heal our relationships. They don't want us being friends. They want us fighting. It's the oldest known technique of control, divide and conquer. And they'll use any old thing that they can in order to divide us. And so therefore, it's a revolutionary thing to make peace with those in your family, with those in your community, with those in your friend circle, with those with whom you work. We have way more in common with each other than the people, that the tiny, clique of people that are trying to pull these strings. And one of the things that was so moving to me in my life along these lines was, I remember in 1984, it was the 40th anniversary of the Normandy landings on D-Day in World War II. And part of this was a moment, unscripted, at which American and British and Canadian veterans encountered German veterans of the same battle. And these were now all elderly men. And they moved toward each other and then they embraced like brothers. Because they are. They were trying to kill each other 40 years earlier, and now they're embracing each other because they have more in common than the people that sent them there.
Exactly right.
So I love to think in those terms, in the terms of what can I do that is peaceful, that is revolutionary, that is like the behavior of a dissident. And I think making myself healthy in all of these ways, healing relationships, these are all acts of, dissident acts, which has something to do with freedom. Where you don't have to do something that's violent.
Yes, and I like to look at things as through the lens of how is this serving my evolution? How is everything that's happening, everything that's going on serving my evolution? Because why? Because I'm a soul and I'm infinite, and these are petty little obstacles that I can easily dispatch with, and I'm going to work through it on a daily basis, right, in my human form. But these were here as like also markers for us to learn certain lessons. Like we're collectively learning about discernment right now. For example, like we are learning a lot about discernment right now. That's a big teaching spiritually. So like that's huge on the collective right now. We're also learning that not to be afraid. We're learning that our mortal bodies are important vessels for our spiritual journey, and we're immortal. So like, how do we balance both? We have so many lessons going on right now on the planet, so many lessons going on right now on the planet that I cannot help but see the divine hands in all of it,
Me too.
And that helps me trust, like, okay, there's medicine here for me. So how am I going to claim that medicine for myself? And I'm not going to lie down and give up. I'm going to stand up and go, okay, what can I make of this? Where can I go next? And that's actually what all of the survivors, the ones who survived Auschwitz and different places like that, and these horrible experiences, they said they never lost hope. That was how they stayed alive. They never lost hope, and they found ways to empower themselves through what was happening. That's how they survived.
Remarkable. Yep. Remarkable.
So that's what we're doing here. We're getting our opportunity. And then, maybe after all of that, we'll share a nice cocktail on the beach while we, enjoy ourselves and read a paperback novel. I mean, one can only hope the golden age is nigh. So thank you so much, Peter. What a beautiful conversation. I loved it. Thanks for bringing your expertise into this, this forum, and for everybody listening. And we're so grateful that you guys joined us for this conversation all the way to the very end. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. We hope you got a gold nugget, revelation, something that really stuck out. And if you did, please share it in the chat, because we want to hear what those are. We're interested. I'm interested. Are you interested, Peter?
Yeah.
I want to know what people think, so leave us a
yeah.
comment and we'll check it. I promise. And we want to hear what you have to say. So great broadcast. Check out Peter's work at BlueSkyHypnosis.com. And I'll put that in the show notes below so you guys can access that. Is there anything else you want people to know about working with you before we close the episode?
There's a free 20-minute call that's available for people that might have questions, but they're not ready to pull the trigger on a session. I also have that YouTube channel called BlueSky Hypnosis that has like 275 pieces of content. A lot of it is designed for people to work through issues with a guided track that I've made especially on weight loss. That's actually the one category that stands above the rest just in terms of its popularity. So all of that's available for people too, and that would be obviously at no cost.
Excellent. Thank you for that gift to the public. And there's also just nothing like working directly with a practitioner. So I also want to encourage everyone, invest in your healing.
Good point. Yep.
Because, when, it's kind of like tithing, with spirit, like when you tithe and you give your time, your talent, your treasure in exchange for reciprocity, for a gift, like you cultivated a lot of wisdom in your life and on your journey, and that's your gifts. And when you gift, someone like Peter, a reciprocity of cash, that helps his family to do well. And so there's like a nice energy, and the healing goes really well. And if you just take a bunch of stuff, the healing and some, things cannot go so well, not as well as they could go. So you just want to, you guys, let's get out of extraction mindset and into reciprocity mindset. I also just want to put that little plug in there for all healers. So we love you though for listening. Thank you for tuning in, you guys. And I'm going to give kisses on the way out. So please like, subscribe, and all the things. Share this out with anybody you think could need it. And here come your kisses. You can join me if you want, Peter, but I like to give little Reiki kisses. Here they come, everybody. We love you. Have a beautiful day and let it all soak in. See you next time on Soul Nectar Show. Bye for now.
If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken, awake, Show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar, from the source of who you are.